Hello, listeners. Surprise! We're here
Surprised
for
us all.
a special SLP show because, to be honest, David, if Wigan had have been in the World Club Challenge this year and won it, then I would have been doing an episode on that. So I thought it's only fair that we get one further dose of David's smugness as Saints have been crowned world champions. How's that feel?
Well, I'm sure it feels even more amazing for the players than it does for the fans, but obviously we're absolutely delighted. It was an amazing experience to watch. I just wish that I'd been out there with my fellow Saints fans. I think there were about 800 managed to travel over, and they must have had the experience of a lifetime. And they're going to be very, very smug, I would think, with the trip over there, Mark. That's for sure.
No, absolutely. It looked like a great party atmosphere, and obviously the English fans love to celebrate a win overseas.
Yeah.
Let's put this into a bit of context, I suppose, before we run through the game. Building up to the game, Saints had a good run out against St George, didn't they? They played really well in that game. I mean, St George treated it like a trial game, whereas you treated it like a preparation for the World Club Challenge. So, that was reflected a little bit in the game becoming more lopsided at times, but Saints were really good in that game. Had a few training sessions where the reports coming out of that from the club itself were kind of like, hold on, I don't know if we're doing as well here. Maybe we fancy ourselves a bit too much after that St George game. And on the flip side of that, no one in Oz fancied you at all.
No. I mean, I did. I've got to be honest, Mark. Some of my fellow Saints fans were very confident that we would do well. I was less confident. I've probably been drinking too much NRL Kool-Aid. If that's the right, maybe it's Gatorade. I was hoping. On the morning of the game, I was like, if we can keep them under 3 scores, that would be pretty good. I just didn't want to be humiliated out there, and wanted it. It could have been that way, but thank God it wasn't.
Well, Gus Gould thought that they'd be able to cancel the game at half time. Declare, I think he said, didn't he? Like in cricket.
He did, and I always wonder whether managers use those sorts of comments with the players. They always say, you always hear them, well, someone's done their team talk for them, etc. But I think they actually did in this case, because quite a few of the players had a real dig at him after the game, including Lomax and Alex Walmsley and so on, had a proper old dig at Gould after the game. So I think they probably did show them the video or show them the tweet or whatever, and used it as a bit of motivation.
Well, both teams were kind of in the same circumstance going into this game. Both teams had only really had one proper run out. Maybe Saints took their proper run out a bit more seriously than Penrith took their proper run out. So, arguably, I mean, if you're talking about the long run preparation into this, both teams have been in the pre-season. Maybe Saints had a week longer with their players because most of their players coming back from the World Cup weren't involved in the final.
Yeah, in the final, exactly.
Penrith were. So what? They had a week less. That's not enough to justify why, why they haven't had the result that they expected to get. I think what happened in the 83 minutes kind of explains more of why we've got this result than what happened building up to this game, because your side were fantastic, weren't they?
They were. I mean, I think, this is one of the great things about sport, is it? Particularly this sort of game, where you don't know where you are until you play. You don't know whether you think you've got a great defence, but you don't know whether it really is as good as you think it is until you're playing against, the best teams. And the defence was fantastic. I mean, I think I was surprised how good our our defence held up against them. And I think the Australians were shocked at just how good our defence was, and that we didn't drop off at all, and managed to close down their edges really well. And it was brilliant. It was great to watch. I mean, I have to say, at half time, I was still predicting Penrith were going to win, much to the annoyance of some of my fellow Saints fans. I still thought, yeah, I reckon they'll get us in the end. And to be fair, they nearly did get us in the end. But we did. We played really, really well. And then obviously, while it's brilliant news for Saints, and me as a Saints fan, I think it's great news for Super League, because, other Super League teams would have also been able to give it a really good dig against Penrith. I'm sure about it. If we went into a match tomorrow with Wigan, or indeed the newly revitalised Warrington, I'm sure it would be a bloody, bloody hard game. So there's no reason, I don't think, why the top teams in Super League ought not to feel like they can compete with the top level at the NRL if they can get the defence right.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about that significance of it a bit more after we've talked about what happened in the game then. But the first 20 minutes, I'll let you into a secret. I didn't see the first half. I was still asleep. I'd been out until the early hours the night before. I was actually in a hotel in Liverpool when I woke up. Woke up at half time, caught up on what happened in the first half, but didn't actually see the first half, but saw the full second half. But I mean, I couldn't believe that you'd got 10-0 up, and it was really early doors with a fantastic long-range try, and then which Jack Wellesby was the man who finished off, and then he made the second try, a shorter range try from Conrad Hurrell, and put you 10-0 up in the first 20 minutes. You must have been in dreamland.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We started quick, like we did against St George. Actually, the pace of the game, we got the intensity right. We went set for set with them. We stayed in the process. We didn't let them break us down. They made sort of one early foray down our left wing, but we covered back and covered it well. But other than that, they were finding it just as hard as we were to make ground. It was very even Stevens. And then, we got, I think one of the interesting things was, I think the first sort of 10 minutes, Alex Walmsley was finding it hard up front. They'd obviously decided they were going to, expend a lot of energy denting Alex. He wasn't sort of getting through the line. They were knocking him sideways. He was finding it hard going. But as we rolled into the second 10 minutes, from minute 10 to 20, Alex started finding his way through the line. He was bending the line. He was getting his nose through. He started getting some quick play the balls, and it was one of his quick play the balls that set up the first try. So he hit the line. He got his nose through. He got down quickly. He was up quickly. Played the ball, and we moved immediately. Roby moved it immediately to the right, down the short side. And who knew? Johnny Lomax likes a little short pass to Curtis Suranen, and who came on a very nice angle and broke the line, and then we just poured through after it. Wellesby finished it inside, but it could have been one or two other players really to have finished it off. So that was, that right under the stick. So no one's missing that goal. So that was a terrific start to the game for us. They then came back very strong. And Wellesby pulled off a terrific tackle to hold up what's his name, the scrum half. What's he called again?
Nathan Cleary.
Cleary. Got himself into a really good position. Darted through to the line, looked like he was going to score, and Wellesby managed to roll him onto his back, hold it up, and then Knowles came over the top and knocked the ball free. And the ref's ruling was, in fact, he told Cleary that he needed to grip the ball tighter, which was a good decision, I thought, by Ashley. So we managed to survive that. And then it wasn't too much time after that we managed to get the second try. He's not the most elegant player in the world, but Connie Hurrell, from a few yards out on a good short ball, is not easy to stop, as Penrith found out and scored out wide. And unfortunately, we couldn't land the conversion. But as you say, we're 10-0 up with sort of less than 20 minutes gone, and that was a great way to start the game. But we're playing against someone like Penrith. I mean, I think it's a long, long time since they've been nilled at half time.
Well, they've been so dominant for 2 years. I mean, I know Saints have been on top in our side of the world for 4 years, and their dominance obviously shines through there. But this was why it was set up quite well. But I think one thing that Saints did well, I think it's probably something to more credit the coaching and the game plan, rather than to suggest that it was something that they came on over by luck. But there was an element of luck in it. But both those tries came down Saints' right, Penrith's left. Both kind of came through an area where Viliami Kikau would have been for Penrith in the past before his off-season move, and both as well were in the area where their young winger was hobbling about, weren't he, Taylor May, who's lost for the whole season. So Saints did take advantage of that, both from realising there's a weakness there in the starting lineup from where they used to be before, and also taking advantage of things that happened during the game to that point. But you've got to credit the coaching and the performance for that, just as much as you have to say there was an element of, harsh luck for the Panthers to a degree. But everything I know about the first half, having not fully watched it, Saints were massively the better team, and the only downside for Saints was Tommy Makinson going off with his head knock. Now, I'll come more to that when I talk about the second half, because I think that did start a bit of a change in the game, but it took a while for it to become a problem, if you know what I mean. So you get into the second half, and I'm like, why is Percival kicking the penalty? Because I'd not even realised Makinson wasn't on the field anymore. Because I hadn't watched it happen. But I'd seen that he'd converted a try, and I was like, what's going on here? But actually, I felt like as that second half developed, the only thing that really changed was that Saints weren't being able to make as many meters. No. And it flipped around that Penrith were making more ground. Now, what they were doing, Penrith, I thought, was making that ground incredibly fucking miserably. Like, I was watching it. I was watching it with Cass, because we'd both stayed over in this hotel after our night out on Friday. And I was like, I can't remember a set where Luai and Cleary have passed it to each other, or have both touched the ball in the same set. It was so one out. It was so just chug it down the middle and hope something will eventually happen. And it was just terribly boring, I thought, from Penrith. It's like they had no ideas, because Saints could absorb it all. But without Makinson, the one thing you weren't doing is getting, especially when Walmsley was off the pitch as well, you weren't getting out of your own end as much. So that did lead to some sort of sustained pressure where they got that try early-ish in the second half.
That's right. I mean, I think we, at that stage, we've got Percival and Hopewate on the wings, and we do use our wingers as quick runners early in the tackle count to make cheap, easy yards.
Well, Makinson's fantastic at it, because he's just got
really good
sense of self-regard.
No, he doesn't, which is why he ended up off the field with a head injury. But so we, with Percival and Hopewate on, neither of whom are particularly quick, we were finding it more difficult to get out. I think Penrith had also had the benefit of half time and sort of worked out how to restrict our meters a little bit more. I mean, a bit of credit to their staff. I think they were also just trying to stay in the grind. I think they thought if they could grind us down and get field position on us, then the backs would eventually, manage to find a way through our line. And it's to Saints' credit, really, that they only managed to do that through kicks in the end. Although I thought that the first one was a brilliant kick.
I thought your ball movement was much more, enterprising than theirs. I think what like you say though, you weren't making the missed tackles or the half breaks that was happening a bit more earlier on. That put you in more attacking field positions. So you didn't get into the attacking field positions in good, with a couple of tackles or whatever.
No, exactly.
That often in the second half, but at the same time, they didn't look like they were getting into threatening positions either. It's just they were probably starting with the ball more close to their line from a good kicking game, and great. Roby was absolutely outstanding as well in terms of orchestrating things and that sort of stuff. Obviously, at some point he had to go off because 37-year-old men are not meant to do that. What he did in that game.
Even the machine needed an oil change before he came back on in extra time.
Absolutely. So it felt like Saints were still the better team in terms of offering a little bit more threat, but Penrith, like you said, had got into that grind and got very consistent with it. Then there was the disallowed try. I'm sure you think it was fine and should have been allowed. It seemed like all the Penrith players stopped very quickly, but all the Saints players were very angry.
Yeah, I mean, to me it looked flat. I think it probably. I'm not sure whether the ref was looking at where the ball ended up, which was clearly in front of where Welsby passed it, or whether he was looking at the ball coming out of Welsby's hands. Because I think the ball came out of Welsby's hands backwards, but he was running forwards, and the ball.
It was floaty, it was a floaty pass, so it kind of.
It was floaty.
It gives it the opportunity to look like it's ballooned forwards a little bit, I suppose. But I don't think we got a convincing replay that showed us absolutely what.
Either way.
Yeah, so I think we just have to trust the officials to an extent on that one. I'll level with you. Going into this game, I didn't know how I felt because I thought, great for us if we win. If our team wins, it's great for our competition, especially off the back of that really disappointing overtime loss, golden point loss in the World Cup.
In the World Cup,
and so I thought that would be great, but at the same time, that would have meant Saints winning. So, and I'm going to level with you. I cheered when Toto scored. I cheered when Welsby dropped that ball and it went out wide and there was a try. I couldn't help it.
I'd have done the same.
And I didn't know up until that point who I was supporting until it happened, and I was like, yeah, no, that's the truth of it all, sadly. But and that had shades of that bloody. Welsby said it himself. It had shades of that World Cup semi-final as well. It being the best player on the pitch, one of the best players in the World Cup, and then all of a sudden the crunch moment, he makes a crunch mistake. But I think he was under a lot more pressure in this instance.
He was.
That was a tough kick in tough conditions.
He wasn't trying to be a fancy down and then just dropped it.
No.
It was a good bomb. I think actually
it was a good chase as well in the end.
It was a good chase. I think if you watch it back, he's actually hit. So there's the guy who runs through the line actually has his arm up and he hits Welsby in the face. But they didn't look at that, and I'm sure that at least.
I don't think it was enough to say that it was an infringement because Crichton, who ran through, was clearly playing for the ball. And there was a couple of Saints players as well, weren't there, that kind of pinballed around. It just was art for Welsby to take that kick, and it was wet as well. Let's not forget. Everyone expected this to be too hot for St Helens. It ended up being it ended up being warm, but it ended up being weather-wise. More our grand final than their grand final.
It was definitely. No, I don't think it was enough to give a penalty or indeed disallow the try, but I think it was possibly enough to help put Welsby off a little bit on catching the ball. Anyway, he did drop it, and as luck would happen, it sort of went the right way for Penrith, and they got men over on that side, and it was heartbreaking to watch. You thought, bloody hell, and you knew full well that they were going to convert it as well.
And that came after Saints had messed up a couple of drop goal opportunities, and then you've got Cleary scoring 2 great conversions. I don't think Cleary was particularly good in the game. I don't think he involved himself enough in the game overall, personally. But
Luai wasn't very good either.
Yeah, and that's my view. I don't think either of them involved themselves enough times. But still, when you go into that overtime period, that golden point period, and you've got Cleary versus Saints who've bombed a couple of opportunities. One where Lomax kind of seemed to lose sense of the game situation and then had the drop goal attempt as an afterthought, and one where all the blockers had gone upfield and were offside at the play of the ball, so had to be penalised when they stopped onside defenders from getting through to prevent to charge down a kick. I think it still missed anyway, didn't it?
No, it went over.
Right.
No, I think it went over. So I'm still very dubious about that one, to be quite honest with you. But anyway, I think
you got too close. You got too close, so that meant those players in front of the play of the ball were right in front of players who were onside on the goal line, rushing up. If they'd have been further back and those players would have been, it would have meant a full 10 metres for those defending players before they got to your blockers. Or an 8 metres or whatever, because it was only 5 or 6 metres because it was so near the goal line. I think it was a fair call, but basically you'd worked opportunities and not executed them. So you've got Cleary on one side who can kick them from anywhere, and you feel like he's never going to miss one. And then on the other side of the field, you've got your guys who've not quite lined it up. Makinson's been your drop goal kicker for years, really. And he's not on the pitch. And how did you feel at 80 minutes? Did you feel deflated, like you've blown the chance that you had?
Not surprisingly, Mark, I was a bit deflated. I mean, to be fair, I was still, hugely proud of what the guys had done, because as I've been very clear, I didn't think we would win. So, at that stage, I was like, look, we've given it our all, but we got so close to winning the game in regular time that naturally I thought, oh, jeez. It's, dear God, to have got so close, and then, the likelihood is we're not going to see this home. Cleary's going to pop one over, or Luai's going to pop one over like he did in the semi-final, and we're going to lose this bloody thing in extra time. But there you go. And
what happened in extra time really is Hurrell who dropped one late on in the game that kind of helped contribute to some of the pressure that Saints had to swallow up late on, and the try that was scored. He returned the favour by dislodging one with a great tackle on Crichton. Walmsley charged forward, set up the position, went to Lewis Dodd, and he got it this time. And in a way, it was such great redemption as well, because Dodd, having missed so much of last year with the injury he picked up in the semi-final, wasn't it?
Yeah, so pleased for him. He missed almost the whole of last season. It was the Derby game, I think he got injured.
It was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, the same game Luluai got injured in. Good Friday,
so I was delighted for him, because obviously he missed out in his first full year as sort of the number 7 with the number 7 on the shirt. To have missed out on the grand final and everything must have been tough going for a young lad like that. So for him to come back into the side and then have the joy of kicking the winning drop goal, what a time for him! What a time! And he struck it really well, and he was so good afterwards as well. I thought he was, he spoke really well after the game, and giving credit to all the other players, and another quick play the ball from Walmsley, which was a beaut, which gave him the time.
Well, in time-honoured SLP fashion, we don't have fan views because we wanted to do this as a bit of a surprise for everyone as a bonus. But James Roby, 50 tackles in the stats. How incredible is that? Alex Walmsley and Curtis Sirenan both went as high as 183 metres with the ball. You also had 175 metres from Sione Matautia. Hopewati 161. Wellesby and Percival also over 100 metres running with the ball, and Conrad Hurrell. And of course Hurrell and Wellesby with those tries. So some outstanding figures really there. So want to call out those fantastic numbers. I'm just navigating the NRL website. I'm not as used to it with the tackling, with the tackling stats and that sort of stuff. But you also had 50 tackles from Morgan Knowles. No surprise there. Sirenan went both ways. He got 40 tackles, although he did have a few missed tackles, so his tackle success rate wasn't so fly. But still, even with same with Knowles as well, but Roby was above 95% on his tackle success rate with 50 tackles, only 2 missed. I mean, the guy's a fucking machine. Still, at 37 years old. I think he's the only man left at Super League who was born in the same year I was born in, so maybe I could still do it.
Well, you never know, Mark. You never know. He's a bit like James Anderson in the cricket, isn't he? Age is just a number to him, and he just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And I've got I just hope, I really, really hope that he decides to play another year, but I don't know whether he will.
I think he was for the first sort of 20 minutes of that second half. He was absolutely the best player on the pitch. I thought he was fantastic. I know Wellesby was outstanding in the first half. In particular as well. He took away the Player of the Match award. He's the one who everyone's talking about now as the next one to be hunted down by the NRL. But I think they'd be looking at some of the other players really. I'm still surprised Morgan Knowles has not had any NRL interest. I think maybe it's too late now for Walmsley, even though As Vossi kept rightly pointing out he's one of the best, if not the best, front rower in the world of rugby league right now. I don't think Lomax had his greatest game, but he didn't need to because there was other players around him that played outstanding. Wellesby, Roby in particular. I don't know if you want to pull out anyone else that you thought was outstanding.
One man I would like to mention, because he doesn't pop up in the stats, but I thought he had an outstanding game, was Mark Percival. The guy is permanently injured, right? So he's
injured as much as he stood offside, isn't he?
Yeah, he will never be the same. You can't resist, can you, Mark? He will never be the same player again that he was. He's got permanent damage to his leg. So he'll play as much as he possibly can for as long as he possibly can. But in this game, I thought he was terrific. He took the ball out really well. He's not quick, but he took certainly not as quick as he used to be. But he took the ball out really well in heavy traffic down the centre, particularly when Makinson had gone off. He picked up that role and kept the ball rolling. He was constantly bombed on his side. Came up with a lot of really important catches. And then right at the end, even though he put himself into difficulty in Golden Point extra time, that ability to get himself back over the line saved our bacon. When they kicked after their first set, Percival spilled it backwards into his in goal, and somehow he managed to evade 2 players and just get the ball back into play. Because if we'd have had to drop out from our own line there, I am sure they would have won with the drop goal in that set. So it was Percival getting back over the line that gave us the opportunity to get back downfield and then knock the ball free and get our own set inside there in their half of the field. So I thought he had a terrific game. I made up for him.
Yeah, I agree. He was good too as well. I mean, all the Saints team, to be honest, were good. Some of them weren't as good as they can be, but no one was bad.
Yeah.
That's for certain.
No.
And absolutely deserved the win. It was a justified victory. They were the best team on the day. They played the most rugby. They created the most opportunities, and in the end, they scored the most points. Be it by 1 or by 20, it wouldn't matter, would it? It's still amazing.
No, we'll take it. We'll take it, Mark. And it was all the better in some ways for having very low expectations before the game. And as a Saints fan, it was one of the most important victories of my lifetime. I called my dad after the game. My dad's in his 80s. He was crying. My dad's been a Saints fan for his whole life. His whole life. So I think and I was shaking still after the game. So I think it's just an indication, I think, for the club of how important that win was. That's only our third World Club win. It's our first down there. We played down there many moons ago, actually. We played Eastern Suburbs. That's how long ago it was, Mark, when we were champions and they were champions. This was before the concept of a World Club Challenge, and we got our arses handed to us. So it was, as my dad said, it's not something he thought he would ever see, Saints going down there and beating their champions. So I think it was, for us Saints fans in particular, I think it was very emotional and a great day and a great achievement for us as a club. That was one of the most important, probably the most important win of our supporting careers.
Absolutely. You're starting to put now the significance of it post-game into context now with what you're saying there as well. You're saying about the third win, that puts you level with the Leeds Rhinos on how many they've won of World Cup challenges. You're now only behind Wigan and Sydney, who've got 4 and 5 respectively, Sydney Roosters. So that's a massive win to get the third one, especially because you've lost a few and lost a couple badly as well in recent attempts. So it's a big thing. One of the things, I was on another podcast doing a bit of a guessing about what might happen this year on the Hypothetic RL. Check that out. Hypothetic RL. I talk about my thoughts for the Super League season. And one of the things we were saying obviously like St Helens are the favourites again, and what would it mean for Super League if St Helens won the Super League again this year in 2023? And I said it would be bad for our competition if St Helens won it again this year, unless they won the World Club Challenge as well, because otherwise it would just sort of show this one-side dominance for 5 years, and if they'd have got beaten, handed it to them like probably we expected a little bit, but like they've had in other World Club challenges recently, then that would show the distance still between the competitions. I think this way around, now it doesn't just set up Saints as the team to be caught in terms of the Super League, but it also says these are a legit, can go anywhere, can beat anyone's side. They are absolutely great. They aren't just really fucking good. They are absolutely great, and they deserve to be talked, amongst all the great dynasties of our sport. And because of this, I think this elevates them beyond being, what we could have had is a debate about what's the best Super League side. The Leeds side that won 7 out of 11 grand finals, what a run that was, versus a Saints side that had won 4 in a row. But putting in the wider context, then you've got the treble winning Saints side that was absolutely fantastic. You put that next to the Leeds and the Bradford sides that won the trebles in the Super League era as well, and you throw into the mix that Wigan side in the early noughts that was in the early teens that was really good, that broke a bit of that Leeds dominance to an extent, and you sort of think, well, this Saints side haven't had anyone come along and break that dominance, and they've actually kept rising and stepping up, whereas that Leeds team had someone that broke that, maybe were better than they were at their best, but weren't consistent enough along the period. Saints have no one to challenge that now. This is the greatest team in the Super League era. Time will give the perspective of time in the future will allow us to look at it as well more, because you still look at the past a bit more rose tinted. We all do.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's true.
I think you get that now to say that this is the best team of the Super League era. It's the best team since the Wigan team of the 80s and 90s. That was, the only other team that had done this.
Yes. No, I agree with everything you've said there, Mark. I think but I also do think, as you've said, really only time will tell just where in the pantheon of great rugby league sides this side gets put. If you go back to the '94 Wigan side that won over in Brisbane, that team is still talked about now, and rightly so. That's nearly 30 years, 30 years ago. And so if you think about that would be us talking about this Saints side in 2053.
When you're in your 90s, that's what it'll
exactly. Be. Yes, I'll probably be long gone by then, Mark. So I think only time will tell how great some of these players are remembered and how great this victory is remembered. And we can't. It's very difficult. In fact, it's probably invidious to try and compare the two eras. What I do think I agree with is that this is the best Super League side that we've had so far, just because of not because of the individual achievement, but because of the longevity of it now, with it being put together over sort of 4 or 5 years now.
I think people won't quite let us get away fully without comparing those two great sides. So if we just look at that Wigan's victory in 1994, the last time a British team went and won down under, a club side went and won down under. Yeah. The last time we won a trophy on their soil until Saturday. I think the context around the game as you were coming into it, there was a lot of similarities because Wigan had been hugely dominant. It wasn't 4 titles in a row. It was, I think 6 league titles, was it? And we were on 7 of the 8 Challenge Cups in a row.
Right.
But it was a different era in that Wigan had
won the double the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Going into that game.
And Brisbane had won back-to-back titles down under as well. Yes. They've won the 92 and 93. So that matches up a little bit.
Similar. Yeah.
One difference was it was played midway through that 1994 season, which actually Brisbane weren't quite as good that year as they had been the 2 previous years. They were kind of win one, lose one kind of form. Although Wigan, it came not at the start of the season when they got everyone in their best phisical shape that they could. It was at the end of the season when Wigan had literally played in every single game you could play in that year. They obviously won the league. They won the Premiership final only 10 days before that game against Brisbane.
Yeah.
They got to the final and lost it to Cass in the the Regal Trophy or whatever it was called back then, and they'd won the Challenge Cup. So they'd basically played every single game you could play, and it was the end of that season. But it was a Wigan side that was ahead of the sides around them in this country in terms of what they were spending and what they were putting into things like that. Okay, Leeds were spending big by buying people off Wigan a couple of years earlier than that, but still, that context has to be there. But it was in the middle of the season for Brisbane, so they couldn't argue about like pre-season blah 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 that people kind of throw around about this game. But like we talked about this game, both teams were coming out of the pre-season. It wasn't like one was and one wasn't.
No, indeed.
So I think it is hard to compare them like for like because of those factors. People won't like that. We're going to probably put them on a draw.
I think we can only put them on a draw personally. I mean, what is great as a Saints fan is you look at the great players that were in that Wigan side, like Farrell and Edwards and Afire. And I'd like to think that in 30 years' time, we're talking about some of these Saints players in the same sort of way. I mean, we talk about Roby that way now, and I think that's right. I think there are other players in the Saints side that hopefully will stand the same test of time.
Yeah, well, I think there's already people that do. I think Makinson already does. I think Walmsley already should. One of the things that I thought about Saints last year is could they win the grand final without Walmsley, and they did. Yeah. So then it was like, could they win in Australia? And they have.
Yeah.
And it's it's sickening.
it's a great era to be a Saints fan. That's for sure, Mark. That's for sure. But I've given it some thought since you contacted me to say, did you fancy doing this? And I said yes. I've given some thought to the comparison back to '94, and I can do no more than say both were fantastic sides, and I can't pick between them. And if Saints are still talked about, if this Saints side is still talked about in 30 years' time, the way that I still talk about and think about that Wigan side of 1994, then I will be a very happy man.
I know, and you throw it into another context as well. It's 6 years since we've beaten an Australian side at all as a Super League. So that's impressive. The fact that we haven't done it down under since, for 19 years is even bigger. So I just think it's a massive win. It deserved us to come out of our retirement to discuss it and share it. And I hope people have enjoyed hearing our voices again.
Yeah, well, I've certainly enjoyed talking to you, Mark. I've missed our podcasting each week. That's because I didn't have to do any of the work associated with putting the podcast together. So I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to have a chat about it. And
well, we're absolutely not talking about Super League because that hasn't really started yet. So...
No, not yet. That's. We're still in the pre-season at the moment, Mark. Yeah. Pre-season.
And we could do another 10 minutes on Joe Westerman, but I think we leave that to
I'm not sure I could
to the Hull FC fans last Sunday and to the St Helens fans next Sunday. And
although it might be the only thing we've got to sing about next Sunday, I suspect we're going to be doing as we did against Castleford last year, and we'll be playing a lot of kids next week, I suspect, with since the boys are probably getting into the beers on the flight on the way home, I suspect.
Well, our friend Mark, the Huddersfield fan, suggested that we should revert to playground rules now, and so whoever beats Saints next get to take the World Club Challenge trophy off them, and it gets passed around as each team gets picked off.
Well, I'm sure Fat Boy Rob will be agreeing with that on Sunday afternoon.
He would have agreed with that either way, wouldn't he? Wouldn't make a difference. They still would have won even if they'd lost.
Exactly, and if they had, it would have been the ref's fault.
But yeah, I think me and Alan are actually planning on catching a game together over the Challenge Cup weekend as well. We think it's going to be the one at Dewsbury, between Dewsbury and Ashton. So so it's going to be a week for SLV catch-ups, and I'm sure when Wigan are at Hull later in the season, I'll get to see Sarah as well. So it's been nice talking to you as well, David.
Nice talking to you, Mark. I'm going to I'll look Rob out this weekend, and we'll post a photograph up on Twitter.
Well, it's easy to find you now with your limp still, isn't it? So
it definitely is.
Well, you'll have a cane.
Yeah. I'm not sure they'll allow you in the ground with one of those. Too dangerous.
Excellent. Well, everyone enjoy your 2023 seasons as much as David's enjoyed the start of it. Yeah, absolutely. And we might speak to you again when something significant happens, but bye for now, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye for now.